Welcome back to Strong. I am so excited to bring another incredible guest to our episode. Tonight's a really special episode because it'll be our final episode of season 2. And who better to share it with than Dr. Daniella Salazar, who's coming to us from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And Daniella is currently working with the youth at the Lighthouse Arabia Wellbeing Center. Welcome, Dr. Daniella. It's so great to have you again. It's our second conversation this season, and it's so great to have you. Thank you for being with me.
Of course, thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be with you all this evening, talking about such an important topic as it is, how to engage with these teenagers of today's world, how to be the parent of a tween, a teen, with today's demands, with today's struggles, barriers. So I am more than happy to be with you guys, to maybe give you useful information, to have an open discussion about how we can best assist this population.
It's such an important topic to have. And this morning, I was on another call with another psychologist here in Dubai, and this topic of well-being in the youth. Obviously, it's a very personal topic to me, being a mom who lost a child not too long ago to mental health issues, but also in being an educator and watching how the youth have had to be resilient through this last academic year and a half. And to see them go through this pandemic and to watch educators and parents and community members supporting them, it makes me realize that the topic of well-being shouldn't just be a topic of when things aren't going right. It really should also be a topic of celebrating what is going right and how we can continue to keep teens on this path. So I'm so excited to be talking to you this evening. But before we get into the details, why don't you introduce us to some of the work that you've been busy doing in your career here in the UAE and abroad?
For sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working with teens for more than 10 years. I've been living in the UAE for now about 3 years. So it's been a great 3 years run. And one of the best things about working in Dubai is that you get to work with different populations, different cultures. I'm originally Colombian. I grew up in the US. So I find that just working with different cultures, different parenting styles has really helped me bring in my skills and consolidate my work with teens. Every teen, every family is a whole different world ball game. So I can't say there is a one size fits all approach, but throughout my years of experience, I have noticed some trends and some sort of patterns that are important to talk about. And hopefully we can discuss these patterns and these themes across our conversation today.
That's so wonderful. And I like this idea of patterns because it really is understanding these patterns. And I think sometimes parents don't notice the pattern. It's only when we're looking backwards that we start to recognize some of the key patterns. So we definitely want to be talking about that. And let's start this conversation on a positive. And maybe you can talk to us about some of those really exciting things that you've seen happening with young people through this really challenging time, and what some strategies that you've seen families using to maintain a healthy mindset.
For sure. So I think first of all and foremost is we believe that the key for overcoming or coping with mental health difficulties is building resilience for our children and our teenagers. And nowadays, resilience is something we take for granted, and we don't necessarily understand what it means and how to promote resilience in our teens. But I've been really pleasantly surprised that the vast majority of teenagers have in some way, shape, or form adapted to the new world, so our new normality between Zoom and going to school and this hybrid model that has been happening for the last year and a half. There's been some difficulties with it for sure, but in the grand scheme of things, our brain is very, it's changeable. We get to adapt to the new environments that we have. And I've seen these teenagers really have had the motivation to try to work the best they can, stay connected in many ways. They've been so creative in how in maintaining these friendships, specifically when we were in quarantine. And without them maybe traveling abroad to see their families, the fact that parents have been so creative in how to stay connected with family abroad and children just trying to find different ways of engagement, I found to be just amazing. And it's one of the components of resiliency, the creativity around connection, the creativity around, feeling that you belong somewhere, has been just stunning for me. So over the last year and a half, the vast amount of conversations that I've had with my teens has been around, how easy or how difficult it's been for them to adapt to this new normalcy.
And Dr. Salazar, I think one thing we forget is that life is about the unprecedented times. There's not a map that tells you what to expect, how to expect it. I think we have these assumptions that life should be easy. And don't misunderstand what I'm about to say in that this pandemic has been completely challenging. But for the young people going through this and making it through, I really feel that they're gaining something that young people from the past would not have gained until years and years into their lives. This idea of being adaptable, learning how to find that resilience, being able to think outside the box and making friends online. All these small little things that we've been trying to get our youth through, but with them staying resilient, staying adaptable, I think really teaches them key skills for life that we can't teach them in a classroom. Have you seen any examples from the clients that you're working with and in how students are able to really appreciate that the challenging times today are actually teaching them real life skills that they'll be needing in their future?
Yes, for sure. So I've had many cases over the last year and a half, but I'm thinking of one specific one that I've been working with this young teen for a long time, about 3 years now. And this teen's struggle is actually social anxiety. And one of the blessings in disguise of COVID for this teen has been that slowly, she was exposed to smaller groups of people. So because we were in these bubbles in school, she was able to relate to 2, 3 people at a time and actually feel comfortable doing all the exposure work we were talking about in our therapy. And she realized that putting herself out there, putting herself out in the zone of unknown, of discomfort, and realizing that with these 2 and 3 people, it went well, then she was able to find in herself the courage, the ability to then expand that scenario in other small circles. And now when the bubbles are not bubbles anymore and the classes are becoming bigger, she's now feeling more successful. She's able to manage her anxiety better. So it came from complete isolation, being at home, doing online work, to slowly, due to the circumstances of COVID, exposing herself to smaller groups of people, which allowed her to organically, do the exposure work we were working on in therapy and really slowly build her self-esteem. And then as of now, she is a young girl who believes in herself, who understands the power of uncertainty, of discomfort, and has brought herself to be, able to do the schoolwork in group settings and believe in her social capabilities. So this has been a specific case that I have found has flourished, even though COVID has been with us for the last year and a half.
That is quite a success. And I feel like we haven't really heard enough of these success stories. I feel like, we're focusing so much on the challenges of mental health that we're not celebrating the milestones, those little tiny celebrations like you've just described. But of course, we don't want to walk over and we don't want to skirt around the realities of these challenges. So I thought maybe we could be talking about some of those little things that become bigger things, some of those common concerns that parents might be wondering, should I be worried? Is this something I really need to be paying more attention to? But when we don't pay attention to them, they can get larger and then it can become a larger issue.
Yes. So I would say there's I would say five major things that I would recommend for us to keep an eye out for our teenagers' behavior. So when we think about, before I explain this, when we think about a mental health illness, we're thinking about a change in our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors over a period of time. And these changes need to be impacting the functionality of that person's life. That is the main thing. The second thing I want to say is that we all have mental health. Just like we have physical health, we all have mental health. So it would be a mistake for us to say that mental health is for those that are struggling. We all have mental health, and we all have healthier days than others where we feel connected, we feel empowered, we believe in ourselves, our positive thoughts, our positive feelings are there. Those are the days where we would say we have a healthier, more positive mental health. However, there are other days where we might go on the other end of the spectrum and we might feel disconnected. We might not feel that our thoughts are healthy. We might feel demotivated. We might feel like we're struggling, and we would go to the other end of that spectrum. And that fluctuation is going to be okay. And it's going to be even more okay when we are talking about our teenager years. But what we need to look out for is that this fluctuation towards one end or the other is going to be sustainable over time. How long are these low mental health days lasting in my teenager? So we're going to be talking about specifically sleep. What we know is that teenagers are sleeping less and less and less. And due to this lack of sleep, their mood is becoming more impacted. Their motivation for school is becoming less. Their motivation to engage in physical movement is becoming less. And sleep has become one of the most important things as parents we need to be focusing on for our children. Teenagers need to be sleeping around 8 to 10 hours a day. And my teens that come to my practice are not even sleeping 5 hours a night because they're engaging in social media, they're watching movies, they're having poor time management skills, so they're staying up really late to do their homework. And there hasn't really been that awareness that sleep is actually at the core of everything. When I have my parents come and bring their children, the approach has been, I want my child to be happy. I want you to please help me get rid of that anxiety. I want you to help my child with anger management, or I want them to have more friends. But there is a component that we are not necessarily as aware of that really is correlated with our mental health, and that is sleep. So I would say that would be one of the most important things we want to be watching out for our teen. That's one. The second thing I would say is, are they engaging with friends in the same way they were engaging before COVID? And is it the same type of engagement? Are they relying on social media more than before? Are they relying on video games to feel like there's a sense of belonging with their friends? Are they becoming more hermit crabs and not necessarily going out as much because of the fear of COVID and maybe fear of having a negative social experience? What is going on in their social interactions? What we know is that through the last about decade, the type of interactions, face-to-face interactions, has already decreased. And because of COVID, that decrease keeps on getting more and more and more and more and more. And what I worry about as a clinician is that these teenagers are losing their social skills because we are now engaging only through online platforms, video games, social media applications, and we are not necessarily interacting face-to-face as much. And this lack of interaction really impacts the way the skill we have to tolerate frustration, tolerate maybe rejection, reading social cues, facial social cues, right? If we are in a face-to-face interaction, I'm looking at your eyes, I'm looking at your body language. I'm able to tolerate discomfort because maybe something that I've said you don't like. And I'm going to have to be creative and finding new ways to bond with you and create a different sort of connection. So our friendship and our conversation keeps on going. That gets completely lost when we are just relying on video games and online platforms to communicate. So the way that teenagers are hanging out is a second warning sign that I would definitely suggest parents to look out for.
So you've mentioned some really great points, but I mean, we have to be honest as well. We have to be in context. Those two, if we just look at sleep and socializing, you've hit the nail on the head. But at the same time, with the pressures of school and the pressures of homework, the pressures of things that young people have to do, by the time they really get to sit down and have supper and kind of find themselves, it's already late. And then, of course, they're trying to catch up. The older they get, the harder it gets. It's hard because I can almost hear parents saying, Dr. Salazar, that sounds great on paper. How am I supposed to get my kid into bed? They just will not listen. We're talking 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 15-year-olds. They're not going to let go of those phones. And then the gaming and the being online. I almost feel like I hear you. I mean, I come from a generation when, we didn't have computers. It was just going outside to see your friends, bicycles, it didn't matter how cold it would get. We were out there. But now we're living in a time where before the pandemic, gaming was becoming more popular. And then, of course, everyone being online and even school being online, it forced us to do it. How do we stay in 2021, allow our children to have access to technology, but at the same time, try to get them to follow some of the strategies that you have mentioned? Because that's a real struggle, isn't it?
It's such a big struggle. And I would have to say we need to start with us as parents. So what are we modeling at home? Are we on our phones constantly? Are we eating with our kids and using our devices? When we're bored, are we also on these apps? Are we maybe ignoring our children or choosing to not engage with them because we're busy answering a text message? What is our behavior saying or validating? Kids don't do as we say. They do as the modeling that we give them. So we can say
that's a real aha moment, isn't it? That's really us saying, observe your behavior, because what they're doing is they're mirroring what you do. And that's a big one, isn't it? Like, I'm listening to you going, oh my goodness, that's a really big one. This concept of putting down your device and giving them your time. So let's we can go over and over, and it would really be parents against parents without children, parents with children, but we're seeing it in much younger children. I think this is the worrying part. We're not just talking about the older teenagers, we're also seeing this in younger primary school children, aren't we? Where they're on these devices all the time, getting to bed later. Let's talk now about some of the strategies to gain resilience and maintain resilience for young people. What would you say are your favorite go-to for gaining? And then what would you say are the good ones for maintaining? Because I think maintaining is really important as well.
Yeah. So I would mention several things. Number one is I would encourage our kids to make mistakes. And whenever they make mistakes, instead of us jumping to problem solve for them, let's reflect over what happened. What was the outcome that they were expecting, and what actually was the roadblock for that outcome to happen. We usually jump to conclusions, or we invalidate their feelings on, with the best intentions. We might even say things like, stop it, or why didn't you get it the first time, or you should have been more careful, or, what was that all about? What were you thinking? Or, use your head, or, these are sort of comments that I get from my teenagers when they come to my practice that they perceive parents saying all the time. And when I hear that, when I talk to parents, I always ask them, use these mistakes to your advantage, whatever the mistake might have been. An inappropriate use of social media, staying out later than they should, talking back to you, fighting with their sisters. Let's use that as a chance of connecting and actually allowing them to make mistakes in a safe environment with you, where we are just asking them, hey, what happened there? What was going on for you? What could I have done better as a parent for you to feel safe and tell me that you were going to stay 20 minutes later than your curfew? Because it's a two-way street, right? It's between what am I doing as a parent? What is the message that I'm trying to give my teen? And why is my teen choosing not to listen to me? It's not because he or she's a bad child.
No, not at all. I think it's really a hard one though. I'm listening going, oh my goodness, it just sounds so great. But I know in those moments when we're heated, when it's a reactive moment, we react. So when we react, would you say that we've made a mistake that, I think sometimes parents just keep going, right? They just keep going. And I know that having youth on the show, very often they'll say, we don't expect our parents to be perfect. We don't expect them to get it right. We just want them to recognize that we're thinking beings just like them. But in those moments, it's really challenging, isn't it? I mean, being able to use the moment as a learning opportunity, as opposed to just drilling the message and saying, don't do it again. How do you, I think we have to be careful not to sound so textbook perfect, and really let's giggle about some of the ways that parents and teens, we don't get it right. I'm if I had my kids here telling you some of the stories, they'll say, what you see is not my mom. My mom doesn't get it right. She's so imperfect sometimes. But, let's giggle about it, but also, show empathy to our families as well. I think that's important because it's challenging. The pressures of work, the pressures of parenting, and like you're saying, use those moments for learning. But at the same time, it's almost, I think sometimes parents look at their children's behavior and they don't want them to make mistakes because they want life to be easier. But you're saying, don't try to make life easier. Use it as a learning moment. How do we do that without losing ourselves in that moment?
I think it all stems back to values. So what are your family values, or what would you like to teach your kids as their values? Values are the compass of behavior. And this is how it will help us actually choose our battles, because not every battle needs to be fought with a teen. Come on, they're going to be having many behaviors and many chances in which you could technically fight a battle, but it's draining. Like you said, you're tired, you're coming from work, there are many things that you rather do than engage in every battle with your teen. So let's then step back. What is it that I want to teach my child as a core value? Is it responsibility? Is it respect? And remember, we might focus on a different value every week, every month, and we talk about it with our teens. This week, I really want us to focus on respect or value or cooperation or kindness or whatever it might be. And we sit together. So I actually suggest realistically to sit on a Friday morning and chat about how the week went and how the value of the week or the month has been actually applied or done. What's been the shortcomings from your end as well. how tired you must have maybe felt after a long day of work, and how maybe you've had a short fuse. And we talk about how we feel as parents. Usually I see parents trying to kind of blindfold their children about their own feelings. And us as parents, we also have hard days. We're tired, our fuse is short. We don't want to deal with whatever is happening at home. We need maybe days of self-care. And that's a very valid point. Our kids need to hear from us that we also get tired, that we also feel overwhelmed, that we don't have all the answers, that we're not perfect. And that allows connection, that allows them to make mistakes and to feel validated. That again reinforces their resilience skills. So those moments of connection once a week in a 30-minute breakfast time will allow you to align yourself a bit more with your child and revert back to the values that you want to teach them.
Incredible. Let's bring it back to this learning opportunity and mental health. Would you say that by doing this with our children again and again, weekly, having these conversations, would you say that by doing this, that this will help them to understand that we will have our high days and our low days? Do you feel that this would help them to gain their strength, and when life does throw challenges at them, that they'll remember these moments and they'll use the skills in those difficult times for themselves?
I do, but I also have to suggest for parents to get educated around what mental health looks like for teens. And you can teach resiliency skills, we can go to values, but at the essence, we want to make sure we know what mental health looks like for a teenager. And there's actually this amazing course that I actually recommend all parents of teenagers or young children to do. It's a 2-day course. It's called Mental Health First Aid Training. And in this course, you learn how to assess what, their thoughts, their feelings and behaviors, to maybe think if there's a mental health illness there, assess the severity of it, and actually give parents skills to deal with crisis. What to do when my child or teenager is talking about self-harm, what to do when my child or teenager is having suicidal thoughts, what to do when my child or teenager is struggling with an eating disorder or what I think is anxiety, or is having a panic attack. These are crisis that as a parent, we need to know what they look like, how to assess the severity of it, and how to actually, as a parent, contain the situation before they seek a professional to engage in treatment if necessary. So it all stems back to also educating ourselves as parents, because we don't have to know all the answers.
No, there's no way we can. Life is changing. From one child to another, things are so different. The pressures are different. Society changes. There's no way a parent, it would be unrealistic and I think unfair to add that kind of pressure to parenting, making them feel like they should have all the answers, because there's no way that we can. Even in our professional lives, we're constantly developing our skills. I like this idea of mental health first aid for parents that have never heard about this before and that live in the UAE or that live outside of the UAE. How can they find a course like this?
So at Lighthouse Arabia, at the clinic where I work at, we deliver these courses on a monthly basis. And we actually deliver these courses to organizations. We have adult to adult mental health first aid training as well. And one of the most beautiful things that I have to say I'm really proud of being a part of is teen to teen mental health first aid training. Why is this training close to my heart? Because we know that teenagers are not reaching out for help with adults. They rarely have a safe adult that they can go to, they can trust, they can share their feelings with. So this training is for teens to actually be trained in helping their peers and understanding what they're going through, maybe acknowledging when there is a mental health illness arising, who are the most appropriate people that can help these teens that are struggling. So the parent approach is important, but also training teens to help each other is a beautiful way of actually destigmatizing mental health and allowing everyone to have access to support, to help, to guidance. So these are monthly courses that we have in the UAE. We are the only accredited clinic that has mental health first aid training in the UAE. And like I said, you can go to our website, you can check our dates that are available. And if you have an organization that wants to be trained, we can definitely do that as well.
And what about parents outside of the UAE? Does this exist for parents living abroad?
It does. So this training is in over 190 countries all over the world. So the UK has it, the US has it, Canada has it, all over Europe, these trainings are available. So wherever you are at, just look for mental health first aid training as a course that you want to take so you can get accredited in your country.
I think it's incredible that you're doing teen to teen, because I know that young people talk to their friends. They see them, they can recognize similar challenges. And you know what, if they're giving each other advice, then this would be the best way to be teaching them and helping them to be better providers of support to their friends. Now, in talking about what you mentioned, that young people struggle to have an adult that they trust, I know there's a parent listening right now thinking, but I do everything to make my teen feel that they can trust me. What is it, or what do you see as a professional that parents need to understand? It's not personal. It's just, it's part of being a teenager. And how can we ensure that our teens understand that as parents, we are here, but if they feel that they can't talk to us, how can we help them to reach out to another adult?
So you mentioned something that's so important. A lot of parents feel upset and sometimes even frustrated that they are not the safe adult that their child or teenager goes to. And this has many reasons. One being that a lot of our teens don't want to disappoint parents. And because maybe we are holding our values or our religious views or our beliefs about life very strongly in our family unit, and the moment that the teen steps away from that, they feel that they are not going to be loved in the same way, respected in the same way, acknowledged in the same way, and they will lose their position in the family household. So I think that fear we need to address as parents. How can I make my child feel safe when they make mistakes? With my body language, with the words that are coming out of my mouth. Am I actually thanking them for making mistakes? Because that's how they learn. Yeah. That reinforcing honesty, talking about the mistakes that we make on a daily basis. So we start normalizing that the most important thing is not about them making mistakes. It's about them owning their mistakes and learning from them. That's number one. But when we realize we're not that safe adult for our teenagers, we might even ask, is there a safe adult that you want to talk to? Would you be open to talking to a professional about this that has that confidentiality with you and that can guide you in the most appropriate way? I want to help you. And when you surrender to the fact that you are not at that moment your teen's safe adult, that will make you your teen's safe adult. Because it's almost acknowledging that, you know what, I'm not, but I want to take you to someone that is, and showing that vulnerability allows you to have a different connection with your teen.
And as a parent, how do we choose that person? Because I think there is a little bit of control in that as well, isn't there? we decide who that safe adult will be? Are we choosing them based on similar values, similar cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, or are we choosing them as qualified professionals? How, as parents, how do we make that choice knowing that it's for them and it's not for us? Because
Yes.
it's a fine balance, isn't it, between the two?
So I think that is a really good question to begin asking yourself. Who do I want my child to speak to and why? Is it because that person is going to tell me exactly what my child's going through and I want to know every single detail? Well, that will say control and power are the main factors behind you making that choice. So maybe that won't be the right choice to make. We're not thinking about our child, we're thinking about our control and our power there. So how about a professional at school, the school counselor, maybe a social worker if you're living outside the UAE, a clinical psychologist that actually has studied and has knowledge and has experience with teenagers. Maybe even a lot of times, if you come from a religious background and you want your child to feel safe and there's confidentiality between them, it might even be someone within your religious community.
It's a tough one. It's so tough. I think about having young children, and there's so much parental support for young children. And then as children grow older and become teenagers, it's almost as parenting groups, we separate, and everyone is so busy trying to get it right. And we're not really connecting as parents. How do we help mothers and help fathers to reconnect just like they did when their children were toddlers and going to nursery and having birthday parties? How do we do that when they're teenagers?
So there are many ways in which we can connect with other moms of teenagers. One being there's actual support groups available, again, in the UAE that join moms of teenagers where we talk about the struggles that you might go through with your teenager on a weekend or on a daily basis, or we talk about how to deal with your child's anxiety or maybe difficulties eating, et cetera, et cetera. So these support groups are available. And again, we hold a lot of free of cost support groups at our clinic, this being one of them. So that's one way. The second way is through these trainings that I mentioned, we meet parents and we're all in this together. We want to learn how to best assist and promote healthy mental health for our teenagers. So educating yourself, and in these educational workshops, you meet other parents that share the same common values, which is I want to be the best support for my teen. Thirdly, I suggest a lot of times in extracurricular activities. So whether it's sports or whether it's dance or whether it's or something artistic, a lot of times in these courses, you meet teenagers and parents of teenagers that share the same common interests and values. So I know with school, it becomes a bit more tricky because we don't have the class teacher that kind of holds the same group of kids together throughout the year, and children are changing classes. So it's going to have to be outside of school, most likely through hobbies or through these educational workshops and trainings that you're going to meet other parents that have the same sort of value system and interest as yourself.
So much to talk about. I'm just really conscious of our time here. I want to bring it together and think about those parents whose children are no longer children. They're young adults. They're either leaving to go away to university, or they're staying home but disconnecting. How do we help these young adults prepare parents to be parenting a young adult, and making sure that it's the young adult that is really taking on these strategies? Because like you said, we can't control it. We can't protect them. Everything's a learning moment. And we have to be confident in knowing they can do it on their own, and we're no longer their lifeline. We're just here to support them, but it's really hard. It's really hard for parents to let go.
Yeah. So there is an acronym that I like talking about a lot with parents to empower their teenager to take ownership of their day, of their mental health. And this is the acronym of ACE, ACE. So A stands for achievement, C stands for connection, and E stands for entertainment. So I encourage parents to talk to their kids about these three things that they must do every day. So what is something that you want to achieve today? Maybe study for your science test, or maybe go to soccer practice, or maybe do something that's challenging. So let's actually get that in. We actually keep track of these achievements, daily achievements. Okay, who do you want to connect with today? And we actually give these teenagers choice, because what we want is to feel free. We don't want our parent to tell us exactly who we need to connect with and what sense of achievement we need to have. We want to give them a sense of freedom. So we want to make sure they're connecting not only online again, but really face to face. So does that mean we need a hobby, an extracurricular activity? Do we need to go out into the neighborhood and bike ride so we can be with other kids? What do we need to do to connect with one another? And E, a sense of entertainment. Do we need to play a family board game? Do we need to maybe have some video games for our children to engage in so they can have some fun, and that can be their entertainment? Can they play a sport? All of these three things I encourage parents to actually have every single day for their teens. And you track these things. And slowly, your teenager is going to realize, wow, these things allow me to have a healthier mental health. I'm taking ownership for my actions. I'm connecting. I'm having fun.
And definitely we can be using this as adults. As you're saying it, I'm thinking that's such a great acronym for anybody. It doesn't matter how old you are, but definitely something that if you start them young, it almost becomes part of their DNA to wake up. What am I going to accomplish today? How am I going to connect? And where is my sense of entertainment coming? Would you say that even breaking that down in thinking, you get a phone call home, you're a parent living abroad and your child phones you, they're really down. You could even break it down and say, what did you set out to achieve? Did you connect? And how did you have fun today? What kind of entertainment? And then you're teaching them that things can be compartmentalized. That's a great acronym. Definitely something I'm going to be taking into my morning tomorrow. Doctor, I could ask you so many questions, and I say this all the time, mental health is not one conversation. So we're not going to get it all in today. I'd love to continue having more conversations with you in season 3. Now, I know somebody watching is going to want to reach out. You're just such an easy person to listen to. I really enjoy talking to you. I know that you said that you're at Lighthouse. Maybe give us a handle somewhere that we can reach out to if we needed to connect.
Yes, of course. So we have the Lighthouse Instagram account. And we have lots of clinical content, videos from our clinicians. That's at Lighthouse Arabia. We have the managing director of Lighthouse has an amazing account as well. Very easy going videos for millennials, for teens, for young adults. Her name is Dr. Salaha Afridi. So that's her handle. You can check our website, Lighthouse Arabia. And you can definitely we have resources and vlogs and newspaper articles that we've written. You have all of our free of cost support groups there. You can email me directly at dsalazar@lighthousearabia.com. And I'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions. And really excited to have more conversations with you, Maria. It's been an honor to be with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Today was an exciting conversation. We were talking about mental health and not just about the issues. We talked about resilience. We celebrated milestones, and we learned this incredible acronym, ACE, Achieve, Connect, and entertainment. Thank you so much. I was speaking with Dr. Daniella Salazar, who's currently based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and you can reach out to her at Lighthouse Arabia here in the UAE. And this brings us to the end of an incredible conversation, but also an incredible season 2. I want to thank everybody that watched us this season, all of our guests, our audience, anyone watching a pre-recorded interview. Creating a community around the world really means sharing our stories so that our children, ourselves, and our community can learn from each other. And I believe that the magic of #Strong isn't about one conversation. It's about everybody collaborating and sharing our stories of vulnerability, of strength, and most definitely of resilience. I hope wherever you are in the world that you enjoy the next few weeks, and we will see you ready for season 1 when I bring an incredible guest, our very first guest, who's going to be coming in from Alberta, Canada. Her name is Bean, and I cannot wait to share her incredible story of resilience. Thank you, Dr. Daniella, and I'll see you
so
all
much.
next season. Bye.